Right, so WC plugins. This is a completely whole different ballgame. Right, so Morten alluded to these on his keynote. Right, okay, so there's two questions with plugins. What? Yes, sorry, thank you. Right, so a Quad WC plugin is essentially, well, it's not a toolkit. It is something that can be produced with a toolkit that we provide, which will allow you or anyone as a third-party developer to extend the list of objects that can be made in Dyalog APL via Quad WC. That's what it is. Okay. Why do we want that? Well, we want that for a couple of reasons. One is we've got this thing called an HTMLRenderer, and we have difficulty keeping up to date with the changes that are in that for reasons which I'll explain later. Another thing that we'd like to do is we'd like to make Conga a first-class object. So we don't need to have a big workspace that goes with that. We don't need quad and age. We don't need all sorts of complicated stuff. And then, of course, so that you can create anything else that you want to use that might sensibly fit into that object-oriented but sort of built-in feature set that we've got. Let me talk first of all, though, about the HTML renderer then. So what we have is the HTML renderer architecture is comprised basically of two or three things. We have an interpreter on the left here, and then we have the Chromium embedded framework, which itself is a layer on top of several million lines of Chromium source code. Okay, and in the middle we have this thing called the HTMLRenderer.dll. Which talks to both sides of this and then and he's aware of, well, and to be more precise, the interpreter is inside the code that does the Quad WC stuff, knows all about the HTML renderer explicitly. So the problem is, as a new version of Chromium comes along, all of this stuff potentially changes. Okay, which sort of means then that we're probably going to have to make changes to this stuff, which also means potentially that we might need to make changes into the interpreter. And of course, we want to avoid doing that as much as we can. Ideally, we want to keep that footprint as small as possible so that when this stuff changes, we need to change this. But the rest of this stuff just stays nice and pristine, and we as interpretive developers don't have to worry about it, which means that you as third-party developers have to worry about it. So it's a win-win. Well, it's a win for us and for you. So the point is then, as I say, all of this then becomes stuff that we can open source all of this side, put it out there, and then other people can develop that. I mean, we'll do it as well. Of course, we're not going to do that and then forget about it. We'll maintain that. We'll look after that. Someone at Dyalog, we'll look at those pull requests and do the appropriate things. I don't use Git personally much myself, so I'm using phrases like pull requests as if I knew what they meant. I don't know what they mean. But for example, then we can just, as well as having an HTML renderer plugin, we could have a Conga plugin, or we could have any other plugin that you like. And, the toolkit allows you to plug all these things in, and it's nice and easy. How easy is it? Well, how much time have we got? Let's do one. Let's build one. There's some C code here. We're providing this toolkit in C rather than it's C++, but those of you that are C++ developers will realize that that's a lie as soon as you see the code. It's not C#. We could put a C# layer on top of this, but because we're targeting AIX and other platforms that don't have .NET, we can't use C#, and we can't rely on any .NET things either. So this is bare to the bones C code. For this audience, I've tried to make that as, what's the word? Unintrusive as possible, let's say. So we're going to investigate the Windows API system power status, which is a function that fields in a structure which has got various interesting things about the power status of the machine. We're going to create a plugin that looks at that. But the first job is I need you to pick a number. A number, a three-digit number. 568. Thank you. Remember that number. I will forget it. So 568 is the number. That's going to be important. So let's look at a demo. So here's my Windows VM again. Oh, man. Here is my Windows VM again. here I've got a Visual Studio project. Hopefully you can see that at the back. Hopefully the font size is big enough. Hopefully everything is good. Andy's got his thumb in the air. Okay, and I haven't got a clicker, so I'm going to have to use the Mark 1 finger. This is a thing that and there are basically 5 blocks here. What we've got here is a function that the interpreter is going to call. What we've got here is we've got a definition of a plugin, the name of which here was NNN, and to prove that I'm not lying, I'm going to replace it with? Okay, and then we've got an empty list of methods and an empty list of properties. Okay, I'm now going to press the big green button, and what's going to happen is it's going to get built, it's going to get put somewhere, the interpreter's going to start. I mean, I say all of these things like I've not had problems with presentations today, that everything's just going to work exactly as I intended. But, you know, hopefully any second now, and the interpreter's going to start. Okay, right, so P, quad WC, power, underscore, what was the number?
5, 6, 8.
So it's got properties. It's got events. In fact, it doesn't have any events, but I mean, it's got an empty list of events. Oh, no, we don't want to do that yet. But it also has an empty list of... Yes, thank you. It's great when people are paying attention. Okay, but it's got a number of properties. These are all standard built-in properties. We didn't need to implement anything in the plugin in order to do that. So that's kind of nice. Okay. But let's add one. Now, I don't like typing. I don't like typing standing up. I've got a finger. My finger can point to 2 things today. It can point at here, and it can point at the F12 key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point it at the F12 key, and what I'm going to do is insert a code snippet here that declares a property. And we're going to declare a property called battery life percent. Okay, and this structure here says this is the name of the property. This is the name of the C function that's going to retrieve its value. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to implement that property. Okay, so what this is doing is this is going to get the battery life percent. It's going to call one of our toolkit functions that says, basically, build me a scalar result. Put the result in here, and I want an int32 element in that result. And the result of that comes from the result of this call. And this call is basically just, let's call that Windows API function that I showed you in the PowerPoint slides. So we've written, what, 10 lines of code maybe for that? I'm going to hit the big green button again. And it's going to chug away, it's going to do stuff. Things going to start. Now here's the problem. Because I didn't know what that number was, I've got no script, have I? So, but I have got history. Phew, it's like I thought about it. So now we've got prop list. And in our prop list, we can see battery life percent. Now, always ahead of the game. I unplugged my power cable some 45 minutes ago. Otherwise, this is going to say it's 100, isn't it? I mean, let's hope that it's not. Okay, good. So it's 92. And if we go up to the display on, in fact, let's look at it down here. Hopefully you can see that. It says, I'll read it out, 2 hours, 23 minutes, 92% remaining. What a remarkable stroke of good fortune. Okay, so let's do a few other things. Let's add, what order do I want to do these things in? Let's add what are we going to do? We're going to declare a method. So we're going to, oh no, not there though. It's like, God, that's scary, isn't it? I've just lost my properties. Oh no, there, right, okay. Right, so what we need to do is we need to add a row to our list of methods. Okay, now, again, what we've done here is a very similar thing to what we did with the properties. Let me get rid of that. We've said, I've got a function called shutdown. Don't worry, I'm not that foolish. It takes a result. Sorry, it takes an argument, it returns a result, and there is the thing the function that we're going to call to shut down the computer. We're now going to implement that method. So here's our shutdown too. And it's a little bit more complicated than I'd like. And we'll tidy this up a little bit before you get this toolkit. But essentially what it says is read from a vector argument. Read an int32 element, which is basically just a Boolean that says, do we want to prompt the user before we shut his computer down or not? It only seems reasonable. And then there's a string element, which we're going to use in a message box to ask the user whether or not we want to shut down his machine. He wants us to shut down his machine. And then we're going to build a scalar result containing the result of whether the user pressed yes or not in the message box. So we're going to hit the big green button again. We can now create our P. And now we can see that our autocomplete says, oh, it's now got a shutdown in there. We will prompt the user because it seems fair. Are you sure? And again, Mr. Fine, why not 568, just to prove there's nothing clever going on. And it says, are you sure, Mr. 568? What button do you want me to press? No, I'm going to do it. Okay, so it does a lock rather than a shutdown. But I mean, it does what we want it to do. If we wanted to say, shut down the machine without asking, we can pass a 0 there, and the code just says, all right, well, I'll not bother asking that. So again, what we've done is we've added this plugin. We've got this functionality in the interpreter. We've made no awkward quad and A statements. We've not had to load a workspace to get any of this stuff to work. It's as if it was shipped with the interpreter. And then just for completeness, or maybe not completeness, but just to completely over-egg this particular chicken, I don't know. Let's go down here and let's add a bunch of other properties. Okay, and all of these properties are just going to do pretty much the same thing as the first one. It's going to call the same utility, dig out the correct field from a structure. We're going to build that, start the interpreter. Now we can create our P again, and we can do p.proplist. Now I've got a bunch of properties there, one of which is AC line status, which tells me whether the power's plugged in. It seems like this would probably be a good time to do that. Not in there. And then hopefully, it might take a second or two to kick in, but it will recognize that we've put the power in. So I mean, it's, again, I've written some C code. I knew what C code I was going to have to write. I didn't have to sit here in front of you and figure out what all that was. But if there are simple things that you want to do, then it's easy to write a plugin that does those simple things. Quotes. So, that was that. So, what about the HTML renderer? Okay, well, what about the HTML renderer? Let me show you some stuff with an HTML renderer. Let's go there. Now I'm going to hit F12 in here, and hopefully things are going to happen. Yeah, we've done all that. Okay, right, so we're going to create an HTML renderer. Now, this is not an HTML renderer plugin. This is just an HTML renderer, which I'm going to point at Dyalog.com. And assuming that all the internet exists and everything's fine, that is there. Oh, no, let's not do that. But let's just move it somewhere and resize it so that hopefully we can see other bits and pieces. It's got a Chromium version. It's running Chromium version 127. That's already out of date. I think they're up to 128. But what we can do now is we can create an HTMLRendererPlugin. Okay. And it's pretty much the same. We can give it a URL. It's got some properties. You'll notice that it's got position size properties. Now, we'll see some of the code for this in a moment, but we'll see that I've not had to implement that in the HTMLRendererPlugin. The interpreter is managing those properties. There's a flag that says, do all the geometry for me. I can't be bothered. So we can put that in the same place as the other one. Of course, it's YouTube, so, we've got adverts, we've got all sorts going on, and fortunately, we can maybe now listen to
we need to be able to
Stefan from last year talking about whatever it is that he's talking about.
Databases or whatever it might be. And
I don't know what it is.
If we can make dialogue to Kafka,
And we can get the Chromium version. It's running the same version of Chromium. It's all nice and easy peasy. Let me just pause that so that I don't have to talk over him. It's using the same Chromium version. And basically what we've done, what we've done is we've taken the all of that source code for that HTML renderer DLL that I talk about in the middle of those pictures. We've modified that a little bit, put an extra layer on the front so that we can do stuff like this with it. It's got all of them. It's got some of the methods and some of the properties of the regular HTML renderer. You know, it's the same thing. It's just now implemented as a plugin rather than as a built-in in the interpreter. So, you know, mission accomplished as far as that was concerned. We won't worry too much about these bits and pieces. So, that's the HTML renderer. It's built the very same way. It declares something called an HTMLRendererPlugin, okay, which declares some properties, some methods, and some events. It's got a flag that says, please do the geometry for me. It's got a flag that says, I can be quad DQ'd if you want. It defines some methods. It defines some events, which we didn't see on the Power plugin. And it defines properties. It can build a nested array here. This is what we use to generate the result of CEF version. This is just a function that says build array, and these are the elements that I want in it. It's nice and easy peasy. So I gave it to Bjorn, and I said, okay, Bjorn, here's a toolkit. Can you please write a Conga plugin for me? So Bjorn had obviously been watching the same YouTube videos that I've been watching. Specifically, this bit where
to do our work,
Stefan says...
We need to talk to other systems, yeah? We need to be able to implement protocols. We need to talk to, I don't know, databases or whatever it might be. And if we can make Dyalog talk to Kafka, that will really open up some opportunities to integrate APL solutions.
Well, so Bjorn had been watching that, and rather than... Let me tell you a little bit what Conga is. Let me tell you what Conga isn't. This is a slide I stole from Stefan last year. Kafka is not a message queue. But for the purposes of this demonstration, Kafka is a message queue. Okay? Just because I don't know what it is. Stefan's in the room. I've prompted him with what I'm about to say next, which is if you have any questions about Kafka, talk to Stefan because I can't help you. So I gave it to Bjorn, expecting him to do a Conga plugin. He didn't write a Conga plugin. He went off and wrote a Kafka plugin, which, hopefully, I can demonstrate here. Now, what I'm looking at here is a remote desktop to a machine in Bramley, and I can see straight away that since I plugged this in here, the screen resolution has gone crazy. Okay, but what we've got here is we've got two windows. We've got something called a producer, something called a consumer. Now, there is no APL in this picture at all. What these are two Docker containers that I've downloaded from Docker or from the Kafka organization. And it's set up a message queue which has been given the name, we can't see it because the font's too big, it's been given the name Dyalog. So the producer can send a message onto this Dyalog conversation, and any consumers, like this guy in green on the left, will receive that thing. So someone can post messages, or any number of things can post messages, and any number of things can consume messages from that subject. Okay, so any number of things. Well, that's interesting. So let's start a Dyalog APL interpreter. I said, computer, start a Dyalog APL interpreter. You see that? You see what's happening there? My mouse is nowhere near the highlights that are going on. Yeah. Right, here we are, we're good. And I've got too many monitors going on. No, not there. Oh, no, sorry, no, it is there, hold on. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at this, which is not doing what's over here. Right, so I now need to be looking over here, which I didn't need to do a moment ago. So what we can do in here, don't need to do that, we can do a paren clear. We can now create a Kafka. Okay, and a Kafka has got properties, it's got methods, produce, consume, it's got an event list, and it's got stuff. Now, this is a built-in plugin. Okay, so it's built in. We don't need to do anything to create an instance of Kafka. I could just do kwc Kafka now, but I don't know how to use it. But I do know a man who does know how to use it. So Bjorn has written some stuff for me, which is in this Kafka workspace. So there's a small workspace footprint, but it's not huge. What we've got here is a workspace that's just got some functions in it, it's got an operator in it, it's got a latent expression that just throws away any other stuff that's not supposed to be in there. And here's a function called produce. Well, actually, this is an operator called produce. And what it does is it creates an instance of Kafka, sets up a callback on delivery, and delivery report is just the name of a function, and it will then produce some events onto this conversation called Dyalog, for which we already have a producer that knows nothing about Dyalog APL, and we have a consumer that knows nothing about Dyalog APL. So what I can do with this as an operator is I can say, let's send quad TS, let's produce quad TS 5 times down the thing, and we can see that our consumer sees the messages that we sent, and our callback, which was a thing called, what was it called, delivery report, got fired each time when we got a notification to say that thing you sent has been delivered. Again, this is all moving between the wrong things. Bear with me, I'm sorry, I've done something and I've no idea what I've done because I now can't go any further. That's there. There we go, okay. So there's our delivery report. Now, not only is there a, oh, we've done that. We can produce another 10 things. We've also got a consumer in here. This Kafka object can also act as a consumer to these messages, not just as a producer. So if I now say I want to consume things, okay, we can go back to this producer here, which is in a Docker container somewhere. It knows nothing about Dyalog APL. All it knows is that there's a Kafka message queue called Dyalog that it can produce messages on. And if we say, welcome to, let's spell things right. Welcome to Dyalog 24. We can see that in our Dyalog APL session, we've got a callback on our consumer to say, look, this message has appeared on this Kafka queue, and it was also picked up by this other consumer here. Okay, so with this plugin that Bjorn's written, thank you very much, Bjorn, we've got a very APL-y quad WC object callbacky way. We're just plugging in with all of this stuff. We're setting properties, we're setting events with this new quad WC object that, that didn't exist. Well, as far as you're concerned in this room, didn't exist 10 minutes ago. It's been around for a month or two, but I mean, it's a brand new thing, and it only got loaded into the interpreter because there was a dynamic library in the appropriate place when the interpreter started. Something else we can do is that we can, I've done that. Now, if Dyalog APL produces, we're just going to send here we go again one time, then lots of things happen. It appears in this container here, this consumer that knows nothing about Dyalog APL, all it knows about is a Kafka conversation called Dyalog. But also, over here, we can say, well, we delivered it, but we also received it. Our workspace here is acting as both a producer and a consumer on these events. We can do these things all together at the same time. Okay. And you know what? I think broadly speaking, that's it. Yeah, we've done that. Oh, and right, what was the number? Now, there's been some very sneaky stuff going on here. Yeah, we knew that, didn't we? Right, okay, so the only point I was going to make here, and it doesn't matter that it's not worked, is that obviously you can have multiple plugins working at the same time. And because this is a remote desktop to the machine in the office, which is in the other end of the country, not even this country, really, I had some clever stuff. Every time I made it, was copying it to that machine so that machine could pick it up, and that's gone wrong. But you can have multiple plugins loaded at the same time, and we'll deal with things like name clashes on the names of the objects and all of that sort of stuff in an appropriate manner. Not sure what that manner is yet, but trust me, it'll be appropriate. Right, so let's see. Let's go back to the PowerPoint, and let's see if there's anything on here that, yeah, you can read it there, or you can wait till slideshow starts, where it'll be nicely animated for you, but you've already read it. So, right, so our plugins are easy-ish to write. Okay, but let's not kid ourselves. They're only easy because I've written that one 30 times over the past week, and I've got someone else to write the other one. So, that's easy, isn't it? But generally speaking, if the object is a nice self-contained thing, like the Power plugin, no footprint in the workspace at all. You don't need to load stuff to make it work. I mean, obviously, if you are like forms and buttons, if you want to build a GUI, you've probably got a function that knows how to lay things out with your GUI. And if you want to use Kafka, you need to have some functions that knows how you want to use Kafka. But I mean, the object is there built in, essentially, as was the HTMLRenderer plugin. That just worked in exactly the same way as the HTMLRenderer. So there's no nasty quadrant. Really? There's that much time left? If only, if I'm brave, which I'm not, but we could have another go at the other thing from earlier. But I tell you what we will do, though, is if there are any questions left over from the thing earlier, we can probably take those now. That's probably no bad idea. So it fits in with the existing GUI, but you don't need to build GUI elements. The Power plugin used Windows APIs, but it had no front end. It's just an object-oriented object that does useful stuff. The Kafka thing just does useful stuff. And you can write a plugin for any platform. We don't have any dependencies, as I said before, on .NET or on C# or anything else. It's just as long as you can write C code and you've got libraries for whatever you want to call on whatever machine you want to do it on, it'll just work. And that is the end. So I'm way ahead on this one, despite having had disasters earlier. I'll take questions about this. We can also talk about this in the Birds of a Feather, if you like, on Tuesday in the bar after dinner. We can do that. I'll take questions about this now. I'll take questions about the array notation stuff now, I think. That'd be all right, wouldn't it? Thank you again for your time and patience.